Coming up on Market Shares, former President Donald Trump has been ordered to pay a hefty $500 million bond. What his options are to make the payment.
And airlines across the country have been facing some serious safety concerns. How the companies are responding.
And the market's just closing. Stocks mostly lower today to end the week. Hold on to your wallets because Market Shares starts right now. Welcome into Market Shares on this Friday afternoon. The Justice Department is suing Apple, saying its phone ecosystem is a monopoly. I'm Bradley Hoppenstein.
And I'm Peyton Spellacy. The lawsuit claims Apple's anti-competitive actions extend beyond just their iPhone and Apple Watch business. They say Apple's advertisements, browsers, FaceTime, as well as other offerings lock users into Apple's ecosystem, and the company should play nicer with its competitors.
The lawsuit could force Apple to make changes to some of its most valuable businesses. The iPhone, which reported more than $200 billion in sales in 2023, and the Apple Watch, which reported over $80 billion in revenue.
This lawsuit follows years of investigations into Apple's business practices and 2 prior DOJ cases against the company. Take a listen to what U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland said at the news conference yesterday.
Today, Apple's share of the U.S. performance smartphone market exceeds 70%, and its share of the entire U.S. smartphone market exceeds 65%. Apple charges as much as nearly $1,600 for an iPhone. But as our complaint alleges, Apple has maintained monopoly power in the smartphone market not simply by staying ahead of the competition on the merits, but by violating federal antitrust law.
And Peyton, this is something that actually a lot of analysts have taken issue with, because you could make the case that other tech companies like Google are doing the exact same thing. But one of the key findings in that lawsuit that Merrick Garland noted yesterday was when someone asked Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, why can't my mother, who has an Android phone, text someone with an iPhone or play nice, he said, just buy your mom an iPhone. Like people, the whole green bubble, blue bubble thing, like they argue they're trapping Apple in, but doesn't seem to be a viable case?
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. But I think what the DOJ is doing is they're trying to pare down on these monopolies with the antitrust law. We were just talking earlier about how grocery stores are trying to stop these mergers to stop monopolies. But I agree with you in this case that, Apple's just good at what they do, and they're not necessarily a monopoly at this point.
Yeah, the DOJ expanding antitrust laws. All right, let's keep things in Washington now. The Federal Reserve, big news, they left interest rates unchanged on Wednesday. Policymakers have been battling that rapid inflation for 2 years now, and while they've been encouraged by progress, they're not yet ready to declare victory over those price increases. Officials held interest rates steady at around 5%, where they've been since July. They also released a fresh set of quarterly economic estimates for the first time since December. Those projected that borrowing costs will end 2024 over 4%, Peyton.
That unchanged forecast suggests that they still expect to make 3 rate cuts this year. Fed Chair Jerome Powell explained that, quote, the risks are two-sided here. We're in a situation where if we ease too much or too soon, we could see inflation come back. Given these risks, officials are moving towards rate cuts cautiously. Powell avoided giving any hints about when this rate cuts may start.
All right, let's go back to tech now. One of the biggest stories of the week, a fresh IPO from Reddit. After 19 years, it's finally gone public, pricing its IPO at $34 a share. That values the social media giant at $6.5 billion. Now, shares initially popping off almost 50%, now leveling out around $50 a share. The stock is going to be one to watch, though. Reddit is just adding to the tech stocks riding on online advertising, and it's facing steep competition from established industry giants like Alphabet and Meta. Even though it's different, Reddit still sees itself as a social media company, so it's also counting Snap, X, Pinterest, Discord, and Twitch as competitors. And Reddit's revenue jumped 20% last year to $804 million, but its net losses continue to get smaller, so that's good news as they go public. The bigger question, though, is how the stock will compete with those established industry players, something we'll continue to follow here on Market Shares.
And the cybersecurity company CrowdStrike and chip makers NVIDIA have announced a collaboration. They plan to combine the company's Falcon XDR platform with NVIDIA's powerful AI technologies. Earlier this week, CrowdStrike CEO explained that, quote, "Our collaboration with NVIDIA combines the power of the two innovative industry leaders to not only help customers meet and exceed necessary security requirements, but also increase adoption of AI technologies," end quote. The partnership will allow customers to use the Falcon platform data alongside NVIDIA's AI tools.
All right, I wish our Chillicothe Adele was here to talk about this one, but the college football playoff is officially staying on ESPN. The two announced a nearly $8 billion deal. This will keep the network's exclusive rights to the expanded postseason through the 2031 season. The national championship game will be moving to ESPN's parent network, ABC, starting in 2026. The previous deal with ESPN included the rights to only 3 playoff games each season and paid out $470 million annually. Now, while the financial terms of this new deal have not yet been announced, this new deal will pay the CFP over $1 billion annually as the playoff expands.
And Nordstrom shares have jumped 9% following a report that the department store is considering going private. The retailer's founding family is working with Morgan Stanley and investment bank Centerview Partners to see if any private equity firms have interest in a deal. The previous effort is to take Nordstrom private. Fizzled out back in 2018, the company has struggled to drive sales in competitive retail landscape where customers squeezed by inflation have been watching their spending on apparel. Before this announcement, Nordstrom's shares had fallen about 7% this year.
All right, if you want in on Chipotle, this summer could be a good time to buy. In a rare move on Wall Street, Chipotle's board has approved a 50-for-1 stock split. Now, usually you see smaller ratios like 2-for-1 or 3-for-1, but a split this big is extremely uncommon. The last step is shareholder approval, which would be on June 6th. If the split is approved, current shareholders will get 49 additional Chipotle shares on June 18th. Meanwhile, those shares continue to rebound, up more than 80% from a year ago. The burrito chain is near all-time highs in shares, revenue, and profits, and it's growing at a rapid pace. Chipotle is framing the split as one of the biggest in the New York Stock Exchange history and says the move will make the stock more accessible by being cheaper and hopefully welcoming in some new shareholders.
Moving to the aviation industry, JetBlue has announced they are scaling back service to LA and cutting other unprofitable routes. The carrier will reduce its departures from Los Angeles International Airport from over 30 a day to around 24. It is also ending flights to some countries, including the capitals of Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. These changes come after a judge blocked its efforts to acquire Spirit Airlines back in January. JetBlue had already began a cost-cutting program and is on track to reduce expenses by $200 million by the end of the year by focusing on more profitable routes. Meanwhile, other airlines have been making national headlines as well. United Airlines is facing backlash after a string of incidents reported on its flights and from the U.S. The heightened scrutiny of United follows more reports of problems involving the plane manufacturer Boeing. We bring in market shares analyst Michael Lamorte to tell us what's been happening with these airlines. Michael?
Thanks, Peyton. Well, if you waited until now to book your summer vacation, you may have noticed limited availability with those flights. Well, that's because the airline industry has been dealing with setbacks in the past few weeks. Boeing's 737 MAX 9 planes have made headlines with numerous safety issues. United, being the largest carrier of those Boeing planes, faced 8 incidents within 2 weeks, all on the 737 Boeing MAX 9 planes. The company's CEO, Scott Kirby, has gotten vocal about this dilemma back in January to talk about his frustration. Take a look.
Well, I'm disappointed. First, I would say on the MAX is that when it's flying, I'm 100% sure it'll be safe. We have a pretty good handle on what happened, what the right remediation is. So I think we're near the end game on that, and the airplane will be safe. But I'm disappointed that the manufacturing challenges do keep happening at Boeing. This isn't new. I'm disappointed in that.
But it hasn't gotten better, Scott. In fact, these incidents have become a regular for Boeing. Before the pandemic, two 737 MAX jets crashed abroad, killing 346 people. Now that incident, coupled with a stuck rudder pedal on landing, an engine fire, and wheels falling off a departing jet in recent, all prompted the Federal Aviation Administration to open an audit for Boeing's manufacturing processes. And well, the FAA found the company's safety culture to be lacking. The audit pointed to Boeing prioritizing its mass production process over its safety standards, which may be a result of the increase in those incidents. That became clear when a door blew off a 737 plane mid-flight in January, and upon investigation, the FAA determined no safety bolts were put in place to secure the door. In February, the FAA gave Boeing 90 days, that's till around May, to come up with an action plan to fix these problems. But they did not indicate what would happen if Boeing failed to do so. Regardless, the company's competitor Airbus believes these issues are concerning.
Happy with the issues that our competitor is having. I think it's not helpful for the industry, and if it's not helpful for the industry, it's not helpful for Airbus.
Mike now joining us at the desk. So air travel is still technically the safest way to travel. Not a single crash in the U.S. last year, but a lot of customers are getting nervous. They're getting concerned. What's the future for airlines like United and these Boeing planes, Mike?
Well, first off, Bradley, it's great to see you here. I know you were flying back from New York, so glad to see you back here safely. Now, I know the last thing you want to hear is some safety issues on planes when you just get back from a flight. But Boeing is already cutting back, United rather, the, again, largest carrier of those Boeing planes. They canceled over 200 flights within the last few months, and that number could be increasing given that those Boeing planes, they were grounded by the FAA. They also announced that they're cutting back. I know we talked about JetBlue cutting those major city airline routes, but Boeing's going to be doing the same thing here with the United Air routes. You know, a Houston to New Mexico route, which is one of the major routes there, takes 2 flights a day, but by May, United is limiting that to just 1.
And the FAA really trying to make sure Boeing gets their act together with these quality control and manufacturing issues as well. Michael Lamorte, thank you so much. Of course.
And coming up after the break, we'll have your market movers for you. Stick with us.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Market Shares. The market's just closing on the week. Let's take a look at how our major 3 indexes ended the week. The big news this week, Peyton, we mentioned it earlier, the Fed deciding not to raise interest rates, or not to lower them, rather. They're keeping things steady for now, and the markets were happy on the news that the Fed is promising that they will cut rates by the end of the year. Before today, the Dow and S&P were on pace for their best weeks of the year. The NASDAQ on pace for its best week since January, and stocks were a little lower today, but you see, everything's still in the green.
You hit it right on the head, Bradley.
Strong weekly gains for all 3. Let's get to our market movers on the week. We're going to start out with Micron here. The AI boom and its impacts continue. Look at that straight shot up, almost 15% for Micron this week. They crushed it on their earnings report. Shares up, like I said, about 15%. Their revenue up to almost $6 billion, which is nearly double what it was in the same quarter a year ago. They're topping analysts' expectations on their fiscal Q3 revenue. They're upping their expectations that they'll be in the range of about $6 billion again, quarter to quarter, $6 billion each. Now, one thing to watch when it comes to Micron is some new scrutiny from local and federal officials, basically saying that Micron plant that's going to come to Clay, hopefully soon, they're worried about the emissions that facility might produce. So that's one thing to watch with Micron, but they're also capitalizing on NVIDIA's success, the semiconductor and chip industry. When one of them is successful, they all seem to be successful. You take a look at AMD as well, similar thing going on there.
Well, Bradley, let's take a look at Nike now. I know you're a big NCAA guy. You're watching March Madness right now. It's one of the shoes that a lot of the players are wearing on the court, but off the court, people just aren't buying them these days. Revenue is slowing down. People just don't think it's worth the money anymore. They're competing with brands like On and Hoka, and inflation is high last year, and people are kind of like seeing that right now where they're spending less. We talked about this with the Nordstrom story. People are just not wanting to spend money on things like clothes and saving it for the necessities of life. They're expecting the revenue to fall by a low single-digit percentage in the first half of the year. They're expecting it to go up in the fiscal year 4% in the first quarter and 6% in the second, but it's just not doing as well as they would like to, so they're kind of cutting down on their classic shoes actually. And yeah, they're always going to be around. It's just kind of the ebb and flow. They're just not doing too great right now.
Yeah, a lot of increased competition. Since Nike first got into the business, there's just been more and more competition every year. But a big win for them earlier, I don't know if you saw, but Germany's national soccer team is actually moving away from Adidas. They were with Adidas for almost 70 years. They're moving to Nike starting next year. So that's a win for Nike.
Hopefully it's on the up and up.
Let's get to our last mover on the week. Not moving too much, but definitely something worth talking about is Apple. We mentioned that DOJ lawsuit at the top of the show, but surprisingly, it's really not affecting the tech giant stock too much. Analysts actually think now or pretty soon could be a good time to buy in relation to that DOJ lawsuit.
Yeah, I would say once you kind of get sucked into the Appleverse, you're just there for life, kind of like we talked about earlier. So this lawsuit is kind of to try to make them make more, and they're just going to do it better than other competitors. And I think that that's going to help their stock a little bit as well.
Yeah, essentially the argument is no matter what happens with the lawsuit, Apple's just going to be forced to make better products than everyone else and continue to innovate.
Exactly. And earlier today, former President Donald Trump claimed he had nearly $500 million in cash. This comes after his lawyer said he does not have enough money to post a bond for $464 million civil fraud appeal. What his options are to pay this off after the break.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? My. Oh.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner! Go?
Excellent. Soccer is fun. Yeah, I saw you guys out there. We're the family.
Yeah!
Oh, I thought you were on my team.
Earlier today, it was announced that shareholders in Digital World Acquisition Corporation voted to approve a merger with Donald Trump's social media company. This deal could gain an eventual $3 billion for the former president.
This vote comes 2.5 years after the acquisition company announced its plan to merge with Trump Media and Technology Group, the private firm that owns Truth Social. Let's go to Luke Radel now, because the sum of cash that could come from this deal could help the former president, who currently faces huge legal bills from his attorneys in criminal and civil cases. Luke, what's the latest on all of this? I know you've been tracking it.
Yeah, Bradley and Peyton, the hits just keep on coming for the former president, a man who has built his brand on having lots of money. Roll the tape. Don't have to.
Because I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I don't need anybody's money. I'm using my own money. I'm not using the lobbyists. I'm not using donors. I don't care.
You deal in cash all the time. I deal in cash all the time. It comes a time where that gets a little boring.
I ran, and everybody knew I was a rich person. I'm really rich. I'll show you that in a second. And by the way, I'm not even saying that in a brag. That's the kind of mindset, that's the kind of thinking you need for this country.
And now the brand is worth much more. If you look, I mean, I became president because of the brand. Okay? I became president.
But now we're about to see just how really rich he is. Monday is the deadline for him to cough up $454 million in a penalty he owes after his civil fraud case. This is the case brought by New York State Attorney General Letitia James that proved Donald Trump and his business associates inflated the value of his assets in order to get more favorable terms from banks on loans. In a series of lengthy all-caps posts on Truth Social, Trump calls the judgment, quote, so unconstitutional and unfair, and has vowed to appeal. But in order to do so, he has to put up the money for a bond in the full amount. How does that work, you may ask? Well, there are three big players involved in this process. The defendant, Donald Trump, there in orange, the bonding company in green, and the civil court here in yellow. Now, typically, this bonding company is a private company, an insurance agency, or a bank that vouches to the court that the defendant will be able to cover their full amount once a case goes to trial. Now, the reason why the bonding company makes that promise, it's not out of the goodness of their heart. It's because the defendant puts up collateral, whether that's cash, stocks, or in Mr. Trump's case, most likely real estate. But Trump's attorneys have told the court that they have attempted to work with nearly 30 different bonding companies, and all of them declined. Guys?
So, Luke, how can Trump solve his cash crunch?
Yeah, he's in a bit of a bind right now. He has a couple of different options in order to make this bond on time. Like I said, Monday is that deadline. He could expect a cash infusion from a wealthy donor. There are plenty of Republican billionaires out there that could help him out but haven't yet. He could sell off some of his real estate assets in a fire sale, but that's not expected to make up for the full amount. Or he could work on that Truth Social deal. That's something that we've been talking about a lot. $3 billion added to his net worth from that today. That potentially could save him in the long run.
Luke, that's actually my question for you. It's a big cash infusion, big news in that deal today. Could this save him?
Yeah, it's a little too good to be true, Bradley. Unfortunately for the former president, he can't sell his shares under the agreement for about 6 months, which is obviously longer than the 4 days he needs. He can't use his shares as collateral for a loan unless he is able to get a waiver from the new board at that merged company. And even if he was able to get a loan, most experts say that Trump Media is a little bit overvalued at that billions and billions of dollar number. They've been losing revenue, they've been losing users, and the only people that are really on it as often as they should be is the former president. Guys, I'm going to send it back over to you.
Luke, thanks so much for breaking that down for us today. An app used by millions across the country could be coming to the end of its reign. Social media app TikTok is facing a ban alleging it has ties to the Chinese Communist Party. With what this means for other popular social medias, companies, and market shares, analyst Peter Berry.
Well, Peyton and Bradley, the potential TikTok ban is hitting the Senate floor within the coming months. This comes after the House voted overwhelmingly to ban TikTok in the U.S. unless it is sold to a company based outside of China. If passed by the Senate and signed by the president, it would force a sale of the app. TikTok is owned by the Chinese company ByteDance, and U.S. lawmakers are concerned about the company's alleged ties to the Chinese Communist Party. The theory is that once TikTok is downloaded, ByteDance has access to the personal information of the TikTok user and can influence what they see. TikTok was the most downloaded social media app in the U.S. last year. Facebook ranked second and Instagram was third. TikTok's revenue in 2023 was $16 billion in the United States alone. Worldwide, TikTok earned a staggering $120 billion for ByteDance in 2023, according to the Financial Times. These big numbers in the U.S. came around because 170 million people use this app in the U.S. Advertisers paid ByteDance to reach them. But let's take a look at some of the critiques and praises of this app.
Somewhat narrow issue where we basically have a foreign government controlling one of the most powerful algorithms influencing the U.S. here. I worry that the practicalities of the divestment, the 6-month time period in this proposed bill, there's a possibility this bill might be designed to fail. And if the
banned, and we went through this before over a year ago, where we knew early on that with what happened with Vine, that we would, because we're in social media, we would need to diversify, which we've done. So we're although TikTok is probably the biggest platform for us, we are on all the other platforms.
TikTok's competitors have taken advantage of TikTok's weakened state to boost their own brands. Short video apps such as YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels and Triller are positioning themselves as TikTok's replacement if it is no longer available in the U.S. TikTok supporters say it must stay available in the U.S., that it is essential. It allows business to sell their products and services to reach millions of Americans. Peyton and Bradley, I'm going to send it back to you guys.
Peter, thank you so much. We're going to continue to follow that. Meanwhile, Target is rolling out a new self-checkout policy. What shoppers need to know after the break.
1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother, you, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, your plumber.
Breathe right into your foot.
Your plumber's masseuse.
Yes.
You, your dog walker, your cat jogger. With early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Welcome back. If you're heading to the self-checkout lanes in Target, you may want to count the items in your cart first. The retailer is putting some new rules into place that will limit shoppers to 10 items or fewer in the self-checkout lane.
According to the company, these changes are aimed at making the purchase process simpler. Target reported that after testing this new rule, they found that self-checkout process went twice as fast. Alongside these changes, the company announced that stores will increase the number of traditional lanes staffed with cashiers.
So, good news that they're bringing on some more cashiers, but I think we know what the real reason behind this is, Peyton. The massive theft at those self-checkout lanes.
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I'm a big Target girl, big self-checkout girl. Now I'm being limited to 10 items, but I do understand the reason behind all of this is the fact that they're getting stolen from a lot.
Well, it's not just Target. There's been pushback against self-checkout lanes and the whole process at other retailers as well. Walmart's making some changes. I think they're charging a yearly fee now to use their self-checkout, so that's something we're going to have to kind of look at as well. But, you know, there's a lot to kind of follow when it comes to the self-checkout game because it's an easy money loser for a lot of these retailers.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for you today on Market Shares. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at CitrusTV News for more. I'm Bradley Hoppenstein.
And I'm Peyton Spellacy. Have a great night, Syracuse.